What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. I'm joined by your favorite beat reporter, Chris Fedor. What up, Chris?
Ethan, how are you, man?
I am doing all right, even though the Cavs wanted to make things interesting yet again. And I know even more so, you are dealing with the struggles of writing a game story and having things change. Also, while writing a story about things that happened pregame, which stole the narrative of the entire game, especially because we came into the game understanding that we weren't going to learn a whole lot about the Miami Heat or the Cleveland Cavaliers with this matchup because both teams were down so many players. And the Heat even added Bam Adebayo to their injured list before the game. And he was listed as available on their injury report as of last night. So, Chris, I want to get into the game really quickly, and then we can get into the deeper nuances of the things that happen pregame and why they're important to what's going on in the NBA right now. So, the Heat obviously took the win against the Cavs on their home court. Now the Cavs go on another road trip. What was your main takeaway, if any, from this Heat and Cavs game?
I honestly don't really have one. If there's anything to take away, it's late game execution continues at times to be problematic for the Cavs, but even that has a qualifier attached to it. Donovan Mitchell wasn't there. Donovan Mitchell's the Cavs closer. Things change offensively for the Cavs when Donovan is out there. Things that defenses can do against the Cavs in those kinds of situations are different when Donovan's not out there. So, yeah, the Heat outscored the Cavs 13-6 in the final 204. They executed better down the stretch. It seemed like they knew where to go. They knew what plays they wanted to get to, and the Cavs didn't execute. And in these kinds of games, oftentimes it comes down to the smallest of things. It comes down to attention to detail. It comes down to late game execution. It comes down to valuing possessions. It comes down to decision making from players and from coaches as well. And we've talked about it all season long. In late game situations, the Cavs want to be in those. They want experience in those because they want to learn how to better handle them. And it still seems like they're trying to figure out what to do in those kinds of situations at both ends of the floor. And in a game that came down to that tonight, it was advantage Miami, and you could clearly see a difference between the two teams.
Yeah, so let's go through those last two possessions for the Cavs. Obviously, it really does start with Terry Rozier and him simply being a Cavs killer and has been for his entire career. So, a minute 24 seconds left. Terry Rozier hit a 26-foot step back jumper that also Isaac Okoro was guarding, and he did not allow him to land, causing for a foul. That led to the challenge by JB Bickerstaff with under 2 minutes to go, and it was pretty clear to me that Isaac fouled him. This is the other thing that we need to touch on because we didn't really get to talk about it with JB Bickerstaff after the game. But JB used a challenge call that could have given the Cavs an extra timeout at the end of the game. So if you take that challenge away, the Cavs have the opportunity to then call another timeout, get the ball up court, and draw another play. But without the timeout, the Cavs were unable to get a shot off before the shot clock went off on their very next possession, leading to a Jimmy Butler 2-point shot with just under 40 seconds left, giving them the lead before Jared Allen did his thing on a dunk that came on an assist from Darius Garland. And as we mentioned, Darius Garland is continuing to find his guys when he's not able to score on his own.
Right. That was a really good play by Darius. He also had Jarrett earlier in the fourth quarter, around the 3-minute mark, I want to say, where it was the same kind of set, and Darius missed him. And Darius kicked it into the corner instead of getting it to Jarrett, which probably would have been a layup or a dunk in a critical situation. He saw that. He saw his mistake. And down the stretch, he had that pass to Jarrett, which was on time, on target. That was good execution by the Cavs in a critical moment. They need more of that from Darius. They need more of that as a team overall.
Yeah, and then Terry came down and hit his 25-foot step back jumper that was just nasty. It was as Darius Garland explained, good defense but better offense. And I mean, there's no other way to explain it. Then we talk about when the ball was in their hands, when they were down and they needed to draw up a play. JB Bickerstaff came up with the idea to put Sam Merrill back into the game because the Cavs needed a three. And obviously, he is one of the best 3-point shooters on the Cavs. And he went with a double screen on either side to allow for Darius Garland and Sam Merrill to have opportunities to get to the ball. That did not work because, as Darius Garland put it, the Miami Heat switched extremely well and were able to even corner Sam Merrill and put two defenders on him and not allow him to be able to even get near the ball in that possession, which forced George Niang, a chicken running around with his head cut off, to figure it out as the play develops and just get a layup. That put the Cavs down one, and they were forced to foul. And then Terry Rozier basically icing the game before the Cavs were down to their last couple of seconds on the clock and were forced to a full court heave because obviously Miami Heat did their scouting report of how the Cavs won the game against the Dallas Mavericks, played full court press, and did not allow them to get the ball up the court other than a long toss from the baseline all the way to Jared Allen at the 3-point line, who shovel passed it to Darius Garland and double clutched for a short 3-pointer.
Given that they didn't have a timeout, that was a really good play drawn up by the team. And that is something that they were working on, those full court heaves in late game situations. That is something that they were working on before the Indiana game at shoot around. It was the last thing that they did at shoot around was that very set, that very situation. So credit to them for working on those things and getting a shot off in that situation despite the fact that they didn't have a time.
Everything considered, the Cavs got another chance to put the ball in Darius Garland's hands with the game on the line, and we've talked about this a lot over the season. Just the opportunity and the experience for Darius Garland to have late game reps is going to be beneficial. So far, he hasn't been able to come through on a couple of missed threes with the clock winding down. So possibly he's saving those makes for the playoffs. We don't know. But Chris, what did you think about Darius's play and how he's been developing in late game situations?
I don't know how you could sit there and look at the shot that he missed at the end of tonight's game and say that's more evidence of Darius not coming through when the Cavs needed him to. That was a very, very difficult shot. The clock was winding down. They didn't have any timeouts. It was a scramble situation. The fact that they even got a shot at the rim in that situation speaks to, like I said, their preparation and the play that they ran. But that is an evidence of, well, Darius missed a shot. He can't come through. Terry Rozier does. I thought there were moments in the fourth quarter where Darius was good at breaking down the defense and making the right plays for himself and for his teammates. He made 2 threes in the fourth quarter. Some of them were very, very timely. I think the end of game situation that you referenced, where Miami switched everything and kind of caused the Cavs' offensive set to break down, was more about Miami's defense and the Cavs not having Donovan Mitchell in that kind of situation. Look, if we're being honest, Darius could be better in late game situations. Historically, he has not been good enough in late game situations for the Cavs. But I don't think there was anything tonight that was overly glaring that he did wrong. He didn't throw a pass through a teammate's hands or behind a teammate. He didn't dribble down the shot clock and take terrible shots in the fourth quarter. Nothing like that from tonight stood out to me. In saying that, I think Darius would admit, and I think the Cavs would admit, that in late game situations, he's going to have to learn to be better in those. The way that Terry Rozier was tonight for the Heat, the way that Jimmy Butler was tonight for the Heat. There's just a different level of, I don't know if it's confidence, I don't know if it's comfortability, but there's a different level of something that Miami had in the late game situation that the Cavs were lacking.
After all of that craziness, I think what I really want to hit on is I saw some fans questioning Isaac Okoro because I think that's crazy. Like Terry Rozier was able to make two really, really tough shots over a really good defender. And that does not take away from the effort that Isaac Okoro put in for the entire game.
In what way are they questioning him? Since you brought up that they are questioning him, in what way are they?
I think people were saying that Isaac was gonna kick himself because of the foul at the end of the game, and
He probably will. I mean, he should, right? I'm not saying that it was bad defense. I'm not saying that Isaac hasn't come through in situations like that in the past. And I'm not saying that, more times than not, the Cavs will take that kind of matchup. But you can't foul in that situation. You're up four. He makes a three. Okay, you want to contest. I get it. You definitely want to contest. You want to make it a difficult shot. You can't foul in that situation to give them an opportunity to tie the game. That was a mistake by Isaac. That was something that he would probably want to have back. That doesn't mean he's a bad defender. Doesn't mean that he shouldn't be in those situations on defense in end of game situations, but he should. He should feel bad about that. He should be kicking himself about that because those are the kinds of plays that you cannot make in those kinds of games. You can't beat yourself. You can't mess up the things that you control.
yeah, I'm talking more about fans that were just saying that Isaac sucks or he got
Yeah,
cooked
well, that's
or
not true.
anything. Like those things are kind of egregious to say
Right.
after playing as well as he did throughout the entire game. Like obviously there's room for improvement and you can't foul in those situations like you mentioned. But the overall performance, I mean, the first foul, the 4-point foul was Isaac's first foul of the entire game. That is a testament to his work on that end of the ball. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that.
This is the NBA. Strap on your big boy pants. You can't foul in that situation. You cannot foul a 3-point shooter in that situation. Period.
All right, Chris, I want to do a quick injury update really quickly. So I was at shoot around earlier today, and Max Struess and Evan Mobley were both there afterwards, getting slight work in with Monty Bates. So Evan and Max did their own shooting exercises, their own solo things, but then they got into some moving parts with Amani and a little King of the Court action, which I know a lot of fans might play on Blacktop 2K or things of that nature. It was interesting to see, especially because Imani was obviously going up against bigger and stronger players, and you got to see him create and work on his game while Max Struess and Evan Mobley are obviously trying to get back from Evan Mobley's ankle injury and Max Struess's knee injury. And it was good to see those guys back on the court because we hadn't seen them do a whole lot of moving work as of yet. So I know you have a more insight scoop on that. So go ahead and give that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I just get the sense that, as I've been saying with Max, as I've been saying with Evan, it's closer to the end of the month type thing. I would be surprised. I'm just looking ahead to the schedule right now when it comes to the Cavs. Obviously, they've got this road trip coming up where they're playing against Minnesota and Miami, and then they come home for one game against Charlotte, and then they head on the road against Charlotte. It just feels like, based on where these guys are in terms of their recovery, based on the nature of the injury, based on the more stuff that they can do on the court, and based on a few conversations that I've had either with them, people close to them, or people around the team, just feels like next week. I never rule out anybody saying, hey, I'm ready to go. I never rule out the quickness that Evan Mobley can recover from injuries because he's got Wolverine blood and he's really, really young and he recovers quickly in his history. But it just feels like, to me, a next week thing for Evan, for Max. The Dean Wade thing's tricky, right? Because it's just soreness. It's not a strain. It's not a sprain. It's not nasal surgery that Donovan Mitchell had that has like more of a clear timeline ish attached to it. But the hope with Dean was that he would be back by this weekend. So we'll see if that actually happens for him. But when it comes to Max and Evan, like I said, it just feels more like next week as opposed to this weekend for both of those guys. As JB Bickerstaff said, though, before the game, all of those guys are progressing. And now the big thing is, all right, they're going to continue to increase their activity. How does their body feel after that? How does the body respond to that increase? And how do they feel the next day? Because that's something that nobody can really predict. A lot of these things are moving targets, which is why teams and players don't love putting a specific date out there for what they're targeting, because one thing could change that, because one bad day of a workout could change that. Like I said, it does feel like more of a next week thing for those guys.
Yeah, and just to clarify as well, for shoot around earlier today before the Miami Heat game, Dean Wade was not seen by me at least, and Donovan Mitchell was there, but he had his regular like outside clothes on and had a little strip. It looked like a band-aid over his nose, but it probably was something more significant than that.
They're getting close. We'll put it that way.
Yep. And so for those asking for an injury update on those guys, there you go. I think this would be a great place to take a break. Then we'll come back and we'll discuss what we mentioned earlier about how the game is being affected by people from outside the NBA itself. But before then, become a Cavs insider and interact with me and Chris by subscribing to Subtext. You can sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word stop. It's easy. But we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from Chris and me. We'll be right back. All right, Chris, we want to get into why the NBA is more than just a game and how people outside of the game are now benefiting from the players and coaches and how the teams play because of betting. We talked to JB Bickerstaff, Eric Spoelstra, and some of the guys about how the league is changing and how fans are interacting differently since betting has become a more accessible thing with the different outlets that are being used. And it started yesterday with Tyrese Halliburton talking about how he feels like a prop to some people because all they're looking for from him is a certain number or things of that nature to help them win money. It's less about how he interacts with people as a person or how he plays because of them wanting the team to win, but more so about the money. So JB circled back to say that he got threats from people sitting in the stands and that leading to them having to be escorted out of the game because of how egregious it was getting. And then Eric Spoelstra said that they had a similar incident with Victor Oladipo last year. And the situation was that he didn't take a three in the latter half of the game that was already decided. And he used the words, the fan was beside himself. So I wanted to get your perspective on betting as a whole and how it is now impacting the game and the players and the coaches that are actually a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has an impact on the game from the standpoint of, well, there are many ways, but number one, it has done in ways what the NBA has wanted it to do. It has done in ways what the NBA was hoping that it would do. It has brought more attention to the game, it has brought more interest to games. It is late March, it is not the playoffs yet, and there are some of these games that they wouldn't have a lot of meaning. People wouldn't be paying attention to. Like some of the matchups tonight: Clippers, Blazers, Memphis, Warriors, Sacramento, Toronto, Utah, Oklahoma City. Also terrible, right? But these games actually have meaning to people that are wagering on them because they're making parlays, because they're betting on props, because they're betting money line, they're betting spread and stuff like that. So some of these games in the regular season that people would just completely tune out of because they wouldn't seem to have any kind of significance or appeal, people are going to pay attention to. People are going to watch them. People are going to go on their NBA League Pass and they're going to purchase League Pass because they want to watch some of their parlays unfold in real time. At the same time, is also a pretty difficult situation when it comes to players and them getting comments from fans, them getting DMs from fans, them getting social media blasted by fans, all because they don't hit their point number. They don't hit their rebound number. I remember earlier this year, I was talking to Evan Mobley because people were going nuts in my mentions on X, formerly Twitter, about Evan Mobley missing a double-double by one rebound. And I said, hey, Evan, man, people are mad at you because you didn't get that double-double because you only had 9 rebounds instead of 10. And he was like, oh, Chris, I know. I just went on social media and I saw everybody getting mad at me I saw all of the comments from people about me not hitting my prop. So I do think it's a difficult situation that doesn't have an easy solution. And I think, if anything, it's just there's tons of promotions for gambling. There are tons of sports books available. The NBA partnered with DraftKings and FanDuel. There's signage all over the place. On the Cavs court, there's Betway. On other courts, there's Bet365. It just seems like it's going to be up to the fans and it's going to be up to the sports gamblers to have some decorum when it comes to placing these bets and how to handle themselves. Just like it got to a point in the NBA where they started to move fans closer and closer and closer to the court, those fans have to have some level of responsibility and some level of adulting, that they don't act like an idiot when they're sitting in those seats, and they don't accost players or coaches or things like that. And it's the same thing when it comes to sports gambling. It's hard because money is involved, because some of these people use it to pay their bills, buy fancy cars, whatever the case may be. So it's hard, but gamblers, just by nature, if that's the route that they're going to go down, they have to have a level of decorum and a level of understanding that gambling is difficult and these players are people, and it's not like they're out there trying to screw up your parlay on purpose. Players have bad nights. It happens in the NBA. It happens in sports. They're human. You have to treat them as such.
Yeah, that's the biggest part for me that I was gonna hit on, is that these people are people at the end of the day. Like, it doesn't matter how much money they make, it doesn't matter how much you would want to be them, it doesn't matter how much money they could cost you. These guys are simply going to work and doing their job. It's not like they're trying to screw you over or anything of that nature. They're not thinking, oh, Jeff sitting in 32B needs me to get one more rebound or one more assist or two more points or whatever for his parlay to hit, or they need us to win by 11 rather than win by 10. Like, they are not thinking about none of that because they can't bet. It has no impact on them. And other than that, it's a game. Like, they are worried about winning the game at the end of the day, being able to contribute for their team. It has nothing to do with what's going on outside of that. And we've seen that a lot with players coming in and trying to tune out the outside world because that is something that affects them. Like, Jared Allen talked about how he has had people in his DMs and people that would literally hit him up. And we all know how little JA is on social media. And that's a reason why, because it's no longer a safe space. That's also part of the reason why I think a lot of these athletes are going and creating podcasts and things of that nature so that they can talk about those things. But it's also a different age. Like, social media wasn't as big of a thing back in the day, and people couldn't directly go at people or tag them or be in their mentions. But I know everybody who is listening to, well, I'll say most people who are listening to this remember Malice at the Palace. Like, if you are a fan that is close enough for the players and the coaches to hear you, reminder, there are players in this league, i.e., Russell Westbrook, i.e., George Niang, who will yap back at you or talk with you and be at you the whole game. We've seen games where Spike Lee has been claimed as the reason why a team has lost or the New York Knicks has lost. And those are the different things that you think about as a spectator, that you could be impacting the game in a negative way for your team if you're doing the wrong thing. Or you could just be a distraction from the game, which is not something that you want to be.
Yeah, and the fact that JB Bickerstaff has gotten threats, his family has gotten threats. There are people that interact with him when he sees them in the store, and they ask for lineups and they ask for injury information and stuff like that so that they can get ahead of some of these lines and stuff. That's ridiculous. That's the definition of taking it too far. And that's where I absolutely 100% agree with JB Bickerstaff, that it has crossed the line. It's crossed a line into a dangerous and reckless place. And I think it's something that the NBA will continue to look at. I'm sure the NFL will look at it. Major League Baseball will look at it as well. But there's also the reality of this situation. And all of these sports leagues are businesses, right? And this is something that is generating a lot of revenue. This is something, like I said, that is generating a lot of interest. So I do not agree with how far some sports gamblers have taken it. I do not agree with them crossing the line into a dangerous place. And the fact that security has had to get involved, the fact that people have been removed from the arena, the fact that JB Bickerstaff needed to get the NBA security involved to look into who the person was that made those threats. Way, way, way too far. That cannot carry on.
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing is when you are betting, which we're not going to say don't do, but do it to a level that you can control yourself. Like that's the biggest thing. The NBA, these leagues want the interest to continue, but by what means? And that's why for me, the Taylor Swift thing with the NFL was such a big thing. There was nothing wrong going on with what Taylor Swift was doing. She was coming to an NFL game, sitting in a suite and cheering on her boyfriend. Like, that is great. And she not only brought women, she brought children, she brought people who had never watched the game before. And that happened because she simply was going to a game. And it's funny enough, there are people and Taylor Swift fans that have now gravitated towards the Cavs because of that, which is also an awesome thing to me because you just see a lot of people, especially when Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce were here. It was a madhouse in Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, and Twitter was blowing up and trying to figure out if Taylor was going to show up. But there's different ways that engagement can be created. And I think that's something that I want the NBA to explore, or I want for all the leagues to explore, because obviously the lives of people that are involved with their game are more important than, to me, making money. But I know that's a hard bargain for some.
There's no doubt about it. It's not going away. That's the one thing that I will say. It's not going away. There are more and more sports books. There are more and more apps being created. There are people that are trying to stay ahead of the curve. Look at what the NBA has done recently. The NBA has now partnered to a point where on NBA League Pass, which is its platform, you can now see live odds. If you want to, you have the ability to see live odds and you can bet on the app. You can watch the odds change on the NBA League Pass app, and then you're offered the ability to wager on the game as it's going on live through a partnership, and it's only going to continue to go that particular direction. It's not going to go the other direction.
And with all of that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris and me by subscribing to Subtext. Sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me and Chris. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.